Show us your credentials or get out." The woman at the end of the polished table didn't look up from her stack of papers. Her voice cut through the warm, taut air of the ballroom, every syllable matched by the hum of phones and the tap of impatient fingertips. For a second, the lights flickered overhead, someone hissed, "Again," and then darkness pulsed across the room. In the half-light, his hands worked quickly, tracing the tangle of wiring beneath the access panel. He slid an old badge along the table, edge tapping gently. "You want proof?" His voice stayed measured. A man with a phone at his ear announced, "It's verified. The license is real. He's on the list." Eyebrows climbed around the circle, some eyes hungry, others wary. The CEO didn't blink. "Who told you to come here?" she asked, even and cold. He paused then. "I was never lost, just ignored." A hush scattered across the room, each person waiting to see which silence would break first. She pressed her hands together until her knuckles went colorless. He raised his eyes, meeting hers, steady. She barely whispered, "You never belonged." He didn't answer yet. Sometimes the truth demands to be dragged, blinking, into the open. Stay until the very end. It started the Tuesday before everything splintered, just after midnight, in a basement alive with old humming servers and the promise of another sleepless night. The servers never really slept, and neither did Thomas. Most nights, the fluorescent buzz of the hospital's lower floors was as familiar to him as his own insomnia. Binders of network diagrams, looping status alerts, a half-finished mug of cold coffee, all the marks of another graveyard shift for St. George's midnight IT technician. It was nearly 2 a.m. when the speaker above the staff lounge spat out a garbled announcement for all available tech support to report upstairs. Thomas's hands jerked away from the panel he was replacing. He checked his cracked phone, the digital clock winking an hour past his daughter's bedtime, and set his jaw against the restless ache of nothing ever being enough. The rent reminder blinked from his lock screen. 8 days until the transfer if the deposit ever showed. Upstairs, the noise thickened, nurses, doctors, huddled patients clutching forms. But he wasn't needed in the ER or even radiology. He was steered instead to the main lobby, where the hospital's spring gala unfolded under professional lighting and expensive hors d'oeuvres. It was not his world. That much was obvious, from the way the organizers clustered in tailored suits and the boards of color-coded donor placards lining the walls. Thomas pressed himself to the edge of the action, hoping to go unnoticed until the call was over. He should have realized the trouble wasn't electrical, it was political. The CEO, tall in dark red silk, moved through the checkpoints like she owned the air. If she noticed the linen badge clipped to his jacket, she made no sign until her gaze landed on the little blue horse keychain looped around his toolkit. She stopped. "Is that your child S?" she asked, loud enough for the group by the catering table to hear. He answered quietly, "Yes, ma'am, Sage made it." A small silence. She twisted her lips into a smile not meant to last. "Security protocol will require certain standards tonight. Unescorted minors, especially from outside, are not permitted on hospital grounds after hours." Her voice was enough to freeze every small noise nearby. "That includes your daughter's little event. I trust you'll explain it to her properly." He didn't move his hands from the strap of his kit. "I understand the rules," he said, no shake in his voice. She turned away, already done with him. Her assistant, hovering at her elbow, added, "If you have any questions about the policy, you can always find another place to work." There was the quick-drawn derision in their gazes. He knew it well, from years spent in quiet, invisible jobs. He waited until the thank you passed his lips, chose not to correct the record, and slipped into the crowd unseen. The elevator doors closed softly, muting the laughter and glass clink above. Behind them, the CEO gave a final glance over her shoulder, already on to her next victory. But even elevators move both ways. Their apartment was 4 long blocks away, a studio folded neatly above a bakery that filled mornings with sweetbread steam. It was nothing like the house they'd lost a year ago, after the accident, after the donation drive that held no promises. The walls here were thin, the windows streaked with city light, but the lock turned reliably, and Sage said it still smelled like home. He left his shoes by the door, careful not to wake her, but found her already awake, sprawled against the fold-out sofa, clutching the small wooden horse painted blue. She sat upright, knees folded, eyes immediately on his face. "Did you have to fix anything big?" she asked, her voice small and bright at the same time. He dropped his bag to the floor and knelt. No disasters, just the usual. She studied the wooden horse's chipped leg. "Daddy, do you get tired of always having to be the strong one?" The question settled in the half-light. Her thumb traced the edge of a faded smile painted along the horse's side. Thomas pressed his lips together, shuffling the box of wires and his empty thermos aside. He blinked longer than the moment required before answering. "Maybe a little, but that's the deal." Sage yawned theatrically, then looked at him sideways. "Can you write me a note for tomorrow? Casey's mom puts hearts on hers. You always just write, try." He moved to the kitchen counter, flipping a slip of paper from between unpaid bills, 3 lines waiting for a word. He wrote in a slant, "Tomorrow is yours. No one makes the rules but you, Dad." Sage folded it once, tucked it into her backpack, and hugged the blue horse tight to her chest. In the small glass jar beside her lunch, he left 2 quarters for the snack machine. Sage, already reading the note with her lips pressed in thought, whispered, "Did Mom ever get tired?" His breath caught. He took a long sip of cold coffee and ran his finger along a hospital wristband tucked into the kitchen drawer. It still bore her signature, looping and definite, from the day she gave her life to save a drowning child. He left one last note, hidden in the lunchbox. "Good night, Sage." She raised the horse in a kind of salute. "Good night, Dad." The city outside pressed on, indifferent and endless. From the top floor of the Maddox Biopharma Tower, no one could see the sidewalk or the buses or the hired hands passing unnoticed below. Charlotte Maddox did not waste time on details she had already mastered. Her office was a hush of white and glass, expensive art pinned between carbon fiber and cold air. She didn't need to look at her calendar. Her assistant, Nora, had already cross-referenced every attendee for tonight's donor gala. As the city went blue around them, Charlotte signed 3 approvals, 1 contract extension, and a termination letter. She didn't hesitate. Her verbal tick for command was always clipped, always final. "Bring in the contracts, don't keep me waiting. Schedule the liaison meeting, find out where the leak is immediately." Papers moved, people obeyed. Her gaze flicked to the untouched glass of wine set under the museum-grade lamp. She allowed herself a moment alone. Her fingers found the edge of an old, battered briefcase propped beneath the desk. Her father's initials were barely visible, the letters worn soft from years of use. She touched it, let her hand linger above the lock, then pressed her thumb against a worn metal tag, the only sign of weakness allowed. A phone vibrated. She read the name Maddox Hospice Unit. Another update. They said he would not make the weekend. The last protocol had failed and the doctors could offer only comfort now. She pinched the bridge of her nose. No decisions, she told Nora earlier. He would want the business to run. A pile of hospital event flyers lay in front of her, the little horse on one edge catching the light. The printout designated staff families and donor guests for priority invitation. But the name in the margin, Sage Baker, was circled in red. Charlotte tapped a stylus against the glass, then made a mark beside it. "Put security on notice. No exceptions. If we relax the rules for one, it unravels for all." The tone was iron. Nora, shifting from foot to foot, hesitated. "What about the technician's request? He says his daughter." Charlotte interrupted, declined. "That's what rules are for." After Nora left, Charlotte opened a memo marked private, founding lineage and litigation file. On the last page, 3 signatures. Thomas's was among them, initials boxed, now shadowed by legal fog. She whispered to herself, "We do what is necessary." She squared the folder, finished her wine in one unbroken swallow, and signed off on the roster. One more legacy she would guard at any cost. Maintenance requests never came with names attached. The wiring for the East Wing ballroom had shorted, the automatic doors cycled on and off, and 3 high-priced vendors whispered about power surges and lost data. By the time Thomas arrived, the specialists clustered outside the breaker panel, their faces tense, pages of diagrams fluttering. He didn't introduce himself. He just slipped off his jacket, blue cotton, guy's IT stitched askew, and knelt by the panel. He found the error in under 20 seconds. Most people miss the way the neutral wire braided, tied off by someone years earlier and left to decay behind a second set of insulation. Thomas pressed the switch, reset the surge, and powered up the board with a faint click. "Not the transformer," he murmured to the nearest vendor. "It's the bypassed ground here below the main block." His voice was even, as if reading back a shopping list. The man, trained but junior, stepped back, mouth parting. "Nobody s done that since," he didn't finish the thought. Behind them, the lights along the ballroom rim winked on, perfect and steady. Conversations spun back up. Only one person in the room, Nora, the assistant, caught the tail end of what happened. She came closer, watching. "Did you rewire the panel yourself?" she asked, voice curious, almost deferential. Thomas offered a half nod. Old habit, just needed the right touch. Nora looked at him, considering. Some habits seem rare these days. She lingered, then carried the news down the hall, past the vendor teams, past the shields of policy. Charlotte swept in, high heels punctuating each step. She took one look at the newly lit room, then at Thomas, now gathering his tools. "Is it fixed?" No warmth. "Yes." She gave nothing. "Lucky then, or maybe it's finally time we upgrade the whole system. Anyone could have done it." Thomas shrugged, not taking credit. "Maybe so. Let me know if you ever want that second opinion." He packed up. Nora watched Charlotte more closely than usual that night. Outside, an ambulance wheeled in, red lights passing over the blue horse keychain that swung, calm and persistent, from Thomas's kit. He had seen this before, 20 years ago. Nora wasn't the type to leave loose ends. That night, while the gala wound down and Charlotte made the rounds with donors, she retreated to her workstation, logs and administrative records blinking at her fingertips. She ran searches. Thomas Baker yielded a generic ID, but older files sat archived under a different prefix. T.J. Martin Baker, M.D., once a research fellow, a short-lived board appointee, then quietly removed. A trove of digital records, signed and declined over a decade, gathered cobwebs behind two-factor authentication. She found a scanned letter, offer declined, research fellowship signed by Thomas, witnessed, notarized, the reason for declining, family emergency. A year later, his name disappeared from all leadership records. Next came a photo, hospital donor archives, the kind printed for newsletters. Thomas, younger, in a suit. Sage, maybe 4, sitting in a woman's lap. That woman, the wife who died saving a drowning child during her pediatric rotation. Nora stared. Sage herself drifted through another day at school, blue horse swinging from her backpack as she lingered at the low, painted fence. Her teacher bent low. "You all set, Sage?" She looked up. "I like when my dad picks me up. Sometimes people say he can't come, but that's not true." She chewed her lip. "My dad knows things they forget." At home that night, dishes clinked in the sink, Thomas's hands steady as the water ran hot over the plates. Sage, at the table, traced figures on her math homework, barely looking up. "But she needs a friend," she said suddenly. "Everyone thinks she's always fine, but she was crying today when she thought I couldn't see." He stopped, water pooling over his hands. "Whose sweetheart?" She considered. "The lady at your work. She looks like she lost someone too." He dried his hands slow, studying her. The calendar pulsed on-screen, father-in-law's funeral Saturday. Sage circled the date, adding a drawn star. When she finished, she held up the horse. "Maybe you need a friend too." In the building's front lot, Charlotte's driver rolled up in a gray sedan, her fixer not here to chat. The window slid down. "Miss Maddox would like to remind you that loitering is a problem. Understand?" Nora, who had waited outside for Thomas, stepped forward. "If you want to file a complaint, do it through channels. We don't need this." Her voice carried further than intended. The driver smirked. "I'll be sure to pass it along." Thomas arrived a minute later, bag over his shoulder, saying only, "I'll handle it, Nora. No payment necessary, but if they want help, I can give it." He drew the line with a nod, not asking for favors. The fixer looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't. "Suit yourself, Baker." The sedan idled, then turned away. Thomas watched the car go, already feeling the clock getting shorter. Charlotte did not tolerate tumult. So when another alert popped, A minor incident at the school, a misfiled complaint, the staff technician flagged by HR. She responded the only way she'd ever been taught, quickly, decisively, without ambiguity. Within 2 hours, she'd left voicemails for building management, questioned a supervisor about protocol, and notified the headmaster at Sage's school about security policies. A form letter arrived in Thomas's inbox. Due to ongoing reviews, your access to technical systems may be limited. Ray, after-hours family event denied. Her voice echoed through the hospital lobby, sharp, plain as day. We run a professional operation. Everyone follows the rules, even if it means harder days for some of you. Laughter rippled, uneasy. Thomas stood short in the crowd. He folded a napkin, slow and controlled, and placed it atop his badge. His posture never changed. Nora caught his eye in passing, whispered, "They're pushing hard." He responded, not the first time, not the worst. He made a single call, voice neutral. "This is Tom. Yes, you can come now." He hung up, nothing else said. At school, Sage sat alone at lunch, the blue horse pressed beside a note. Another student whispered about her dad, about being the only child never at events. Sage said, "But he always comes when I really need him." She didn't cry, she waited. At home, Thomas scrawled a line on Sage's homework folder, then stacked bills off to the side. Something about the world felt smaller, more deliberate. He should not have made this her problem. The invitation came anyway, a final gala for board and donors, press notified, public thank you to key contributors, a forced spectacle. Charlotte presided, black dress flawless, heels sharp enough to keep people at distance. The ballroom shimmered under blue and white lights, each table angled perfectly. Nora intercepted Thomas in the corridor, passing him a slightly upgraded jacket, his own but pressed, the lining stitched with initials that weren't hers. "It wasn't supposed to be this way," she murmured. "You should be here." He adjusted a watch on his left wrist, one that hadn't fit since their wedding day. His steps steadied, nothing about him signaling apology. Inside, chatter stopped as he entered. Several bystanders stared, more out of confusion than recognition. At the table's head, Charlotte called, "Is there a reason the technician is interrupting our meeting?" Thomas answered with the same measured calm that had become his shield. He laid a slim, old ID card on the table, sliding it until it touched the edge of her portfolio. "Credentials, please," Charlotte instructed, keeping her eyes lowered, voice clipped. Nora broke the standoff, pulling her phone. "There's a number on that card you might want to call." A man 2 seats over dialed, voice low, "It's Baker. Check the registry." Silence coiled through the crowd, seconds ticked. Then the confirmation, "It's verified. License is active. He's on our old executive list." Charlotte didn't move, only her hand pressed harder against her notes, knuckles whitening. "Who told you to come here?" she asked, each word a wall. Thomas didn't hesitate. "I was never lost, just ignored." 3 faces in the room changed color. An assistant dropped her eyes, a board member jittered a pen on the table, a journalist's mouth stayed open, waiting for something bigger. A second tighter silence cracked between Charlotte and Thomas. She tried one more charge, "You never belonged." He answered low and steady, "That was never your decision." She stood, her frame rigid, lips parted for another retort, but none came. The journalist's recorder caught every syllable, the witness statement now indelible. 6 months on, the blue horse keychain had faded where Sage's hand met wood each morning. On the first day of summer, she found a new note in her lunch. "You did it. Proud is the wrong word, Dad." The hospital lobby had changed, too. Nora now managed the tech staff, her desk named on a new placard. She paused each Friday at the founder's portrait, his image just beneath the glass. The story had run front page, every copy carrying truth like a torch. Charlotte Maddox had left her post, afternoon light closing over her father's briefcase, emptied of everything but the old initials. No press conferences, no final toast. In their now sunlit apartment, Thomas set down his work bag. "You ready for school?" he asked, his voice less weary than before. Sage nodded, blue horse in hand. "You're not tired anymore, are you?" He looked her straight, not flinching. Not today, not even close. Sometimes justice moves quietly, traced in wires and in words. The world rarely notices the hands that hold steady in the dark or the children who see through everything. In those rare moments when the right silence breaks, the rest of us just catch up or look away. Sage pressed the blue horse into his palm, a ceremony as though giving him courage or perhaps returning it. Her gaze lingered on him, clear and certain. "You could always fix the broken parts," she whispered, remembering, a statement of faith rather than fact. Thomas pocketed the horse. Outside, the city sang awake. It was the kind of morning where possibilities curled in the brightness, brave and stubborn. He checked his watch, then crouched to meet Sage's eyes. "Ready, kid?" "Ready," she answered. They stepped through the apartment door together. Downstairs, the bakery owner, a round, pink-cheeked woman named Mrs. Chen, waved at them through a cloud of flour. "Cinnamon rolls today, on the house for the Baker family." She winked at Sage, who grinned, shy but pleased. Thomas laughed, the sound looser now. "You trying to make her late for school?" "Never, only starting the day with friends," Mrs. Chen replied. She handed Sage a foil-wrapped roll and for Thomas a small bag. "For your lunch. I heard about your story in the paper. You made the neighborhood proud." Her tone was glad, unguarded. He shook his head, a little embarrassed. "We just kept going, that's all." She squeezed his hand, then busied herself behind the counter, leaving father and daughter to the sidewalk full of mourning. The walk to school felt different since the article. A few glances from neighbors lingered longer, tinged with something like respect. Some of the faces that used to look past him now nodded hello. Children pointed at Sage's backpack, where the blue horse swung in soft arcs. Teachers who once sent reminders home now smiled, less suspicious, somehow gentle. At the school gate, Sage's favorite teacher knelt beside her. "I read about your dad, Sage. Did you know how brave he was?" Sage nodded, confident. "I always knew." Thomas ruffled Sage's hair, his own warmth mirrored in her face. "She's the brave one," he insisted, smiling before sending her through the doors. He waited the way a parent does just until she disappeared in the crowd, then turned for home, or rather to his new job. Nora had called the day before, her voice bright. "You're due for a real job, not just patchwork. Full-time, benefits, actual vacation. The board asked for you by name." He tried to refuse at first. "Let someone else have it, Nora. Politics aren't for me," but she had insisted. "No, Thomas, they need someone who does more than talk. They need someone who remembers where it started." And in the quiet, knowing he still had bills to pay and Sage to steady, he'd finally said yes. On the 5th floor of the hospital, the hum of servers and the scent of new carpet marked change. The tech department's office space had tripled under Nora's direction. The old maintenance closet was empty now. It belonged to cleaning supplies alone. Thomas swept through, identifying weak bandwidth nodes, checking the firewall, untangling the silent problems others missed. He left the doors open, the lights bright, no secrets on the floor. He smiled at the staff, the security guards, the nurses, the janitors, calling each by name. Even the new CEO, a younger woman from outside the city, found herself in his orbit occasionally. The air in the boardroom had changed too. Where once old men in gray suits set the tempo, now the rhythm beat to practicalities. How do we serve? What didn't we notice before? Questions that grew from the quiet daring of someone who had been, for too long, invisible. Nora met Thomas in the hallway on her way to a morning meeting, crisp in her pressed navy suit. "You settling in? I have a rowdy new vendor who thinks he can overwrite security protocols. Will you scare him for me?" Thomas grinned. "That's not my style, but I'll talk to him." Nora laughed, relieved at the ordinary banter. "Remember how they used to say we were just the help?" He nodded. Funny how quickly they forget who holds up the load-bearing walls. She sobered then, softer. "I know Maddox left awkwardly. When the board asked, I didn't know whether to say you'd be willing to step up." "It's only awkward if we let it be," he said. "The building's older than all of us. If we do it right, the work, your work, lasts longer than any of the names." Nora smiled, pride and care stitched in the crow's feet at her eyes. "All right then, we'll get to work." Weeks passed, summer bloomed into something kinder. Sometimes Thomas found himself in small conversations with old friends, doctors who remembered his wife, nurses who watched over Sage as a toddler curled up in the staff lounge. He listened to them, never one to demand. They told him the stories of what it cost to run a place like St. George's, the invisible accounting of lives, funds, and hopes. He patched up 1,000 little grievances, flickering lights, jammed automatic doors, software bugs that stumped certified vendors. A legend grew around him, someone who could fix what no one else noticed broken, not just in the hardware, but in the protocols, the rules, even the hearts people tried to hide. Nora started a tradition, coffee and muffins in the staff lounge on Fridays. She pasted a lopsided sign above the coffee machine, "Try." The word became a quiet joke, then a reminder of persistence itself. One evening, long after the staff left and only the ghosts of the building remained, Thomas found himself in the server room. The glow of the monitor reflected on the glass beneath old event flyers. One still carried a faded horse sticker, Sage's mark. He stared at it for a moment, felt the familiar ache in his chest for what he'd lost and what he'd salvaged. The faint memory of Charlotte Maddox drifted in, her rigid dignity, her refusal to yield, her old pain, and her exile. He held no hatred for her. He understood, as only those who'd mourned could, that people fight hardest for the things they fear losing. He wondered where she'd gone. Reports drifted in, retired, left the city, no forwarding address. But one rumor caught his ear. Charlotte was volunteering at a rural hospice, laying out linens for the dying, silent, unthanked. He considered writing her, but what could be said? Justice, in the end, was not always about retribution. Sometimes it was letting go of what could not be reclaimed. His phone vibrated. Sage's name flashed beside a string of emojis, a horse, a star, a faulty light bulb. "Dad, you coming home? Need to show you my science project. Also, can we have pancakes for dinner?" He laughed aloud, voice echoing against cold steel racks. "I'll be there, Sage. Save me some syrup." He grabbed his bag, hooked the blue horse to his zipper, and flicked off the lights. The next morning, Saturday sunlight spilled through windows not scrubbed of paint. The city felt less relentless. Thomas stood at the kitchen counter, flipping golden pancakes high into the air as Sage recited her science presentation, each sentence more animated than the last. "Inertia," she announced, letting a plastic egg roll off the table. "It keeps things going even when they want to stop." The egg broke against a cushioned towel. For effect, she grinned. He applauded, mock solemn, "Future Nobel laureate right here." Sage shrugged, adapting grown-up exasperation. "Maybe, or maybe just a good friend." He stopped, spatula in midair. "There's room for both in this world. Can I invite Casey and Mr. Lee for pancakes next time?" "Of course." Somewhere a phone chimed. It was Nora with a cautiously delighted note. "Grant committee asked for your input, Tom. They want you on the panel for the new children's wing. No politics, promise. Call me when you can." He replied, simple and honest, "I'll help if you need me, always." He closed his eyes a moment, feeling the peace of breakfast and sunlight, the possibility of moving on without forgetting. The hospital now was a different place. Bright posters with a horse and the word "try" adorned the hallways, initiatives for kids whose parents worked the late shifts, for families whose stories didn't fit into donor brochures. Nora's leadership made invisible labor visible. Janitors, cafeteria cooks, weekend shift techs. Sage and her friends read books in the children's lounge, sometimes slipping extra cookies to patients with visiting restrictions. One day, Thomas found Sage by the garden, knees stained grass green, a repaired flower in her hand. "Dad, this one was broken, but I helped it." She looked proud. He knelt down. "You know, not everything can be fixed." She considered, "But it's still better to try." He hugged her, wordless. Throughout the summer, small invitations appeared: Sage at a birthday party, Thomas at a neighborhood block event, lunch at the head nurse's table. No one asked for old credentials anymore. They asked for advice instead. How did you manage when it was hardest? What do you tell your daughter when she asks why life isn't fair? He answered as always, "We keep going, that's the only way through." Nora found him at his desk late one evening, sunlight like honey through the window. "You always stay past shift, Tom, thoughts of overtime." He grinned, "Just the work of invisible hands." She laughed, but her eyes turned serious. "We're lucky to have you." He shrugged. "I'm just passing it along." As summer began to fade, a letter arrived for Thomas. The handwriting was unfamiliar, careful. It bore a short return address, Riverbend Hospice, 2 counties east. "Dear Thomas, this may surprise you, but I wanted to thank you. You reminded me that rules are for people, not the other way around. I am learning slowly that letting go is not defeat. You once said I couldn't decide whether you belonged. Perhaps you were right. I hope someday my service can be enough. Thank you for your work. With respect, CM." Thomas read it twice, then set it aside, the old anger gentled by time. He pressed a finger to the blue horse, felt the softness left by Sage's hand, and let the memory drift away. One week at a new staff orientation, Thomas stood at the podium, blue horse clipped beside his name tag. The room was crowded with faces, young, uncertain, hopeful. He cleared his throat, nervous even now. "Most of you think of hospitals as rooms and wires, machines and medicine. But really, they're people patched together, trying hard not to break. If you're here, you've signed up for more than just a job. That's where the good stuff is." He found Sage standing near the door, listening, trying not to be seen. "My daughter once asked me if I ever got tired of being the strong one. I told her maybe a little, but that's the deal. What matters is not never breaking down, but keeping on quietly even when you're invisible." He paused, smile crooked. "If you ever feel like you don't belong, remember, someone's always watching for the ones who fix what others overlook. Don't stop trying." Applause rippled through the room, real and spontaneous. Someone asked about the blue horse. He smiled, inviting them close. "My guide," he said, "a reminder that what's broken isn't always gone." When the session ended, Sage waited by the door, lacing her fingers through his. "You did great, Dad." He squeezed back. "Couldn't have done it without you." Autumn's first cold made the apartment more precious. Sage wrapped herself in a quilt, reading aloud while Thomas cooked. They lived smaller than before, but not less. Each day, their apartment felt less like a patch, more like a home they'd chosen. One night, as rain clattered on the glass and Thomas sorted bills by the light over the sink, Sage tapped his arm. "Dad." He looked over. "Yeah, bug. Did Mom ever worry she didn't belong?" Her voice was uncertain, big for her years. He put the bills aside, pulled her close. "Everyone feels out of place sometimes, even the bravest people. Your mom, she loved you. That never changed, no matter where she was." Sage pressed her head against his chest. "Sometimes I miss her so much it hurts." He stroked her hair. "Me too, Sage, every day. That's how you know it matters, I think." The rain softened. In the hush they found steady ground. Months bled into a year. The anniversary of his wife's death marked quietly, no speeches or flowers, but holding hands as they walked through the city park, recalling her favorite bench under budding trees. The hospital, transformed by 100 small decisions, hosted a family day open house. Sage helped plan it, designing flyers that featured families of all shapes and sizes, scientists, janitors, cooks, even the man who watched the parking garage. Charlotte did not appear, but Nora made a speech, brief, direct. "We thank everyone who keeps the lights on, the hands that are quiet and steady. That's the heart of this place." Sage wove through the crowd, blue horse in hand. She found a child hanging back at the door, nervous, alone. "Do you want to come in?" Sage asked. "My dad says sometimes the hard part is just showing up." She reached out and the child nodded, stepping into the light. Later, Thomas watched as parents, children, and staff shared stories at long tables. For once, nobody seemed to care who had the fanciest suit or the largest checkbook. The building itself seemed to breathe easier, sighing into its own skin. He caught Nora's eye across the room, her look saying more than words. "Thank you," it meant, for not just fixing wires, but unspooling the knots rules had tied. He nodded, smile reaching his eyes. That night at home, Sage found the note from a year before. "Tomorrow is yours. No one makes the rules but you." She pressed it into his palm before bed. "You still believe this, Dad?" "More every day." She hugged him, arms tight. "Me too." The city outside glowed, not indifferent now, but full of stories, some broken, some mended, all worth the trying. And somewhere in a rural hospice, a woman unpacked linens, hands learning gentleness again, slowly healing the spaces she'd thought were forever empty. Sometimes justice arrived bannered and bright. Sometimes it moved like wires beneath the floor, unseen but vital. And if you held fast, if you did not look away, the world let you keep what mattered. Sage drifted to sleep, Blue Horse clutched soft, trust in every breath. Thomas watched over her, the night quiet around him. Tomorrow waited, sure as sunrise, patient, ready to see what hands would dare to fix next.